All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, and other non binary folks, it is Friday, November the 17th, day 632 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. And we will start with the Russian hardware losses as reported by the Ukrainian MOD today. 27 tanks. Holy cow. You know, I don't know what the Russian tanks cost. Our main battle tanks cost upwards of $5 million a piece. And the Russians lost 27 of them today, plus 11 armored personnel vehicles and a whopping 29 artillery systems. And I don't know that. I was going to say, for the most part, the artillery systems that the Russians are using are about 5 million a piece, but they have some older stuff and increasingly older stuff out there these days. So it's hard to say. Now, in the news, what we got word from the Ukrainian Southern Command just yesterday morning. Natalia Humenyuk told us that the Russians have stockpiled, the Ukrainians believe, about 800 Onyx and Caliber class missiles in Crimea to fire against Ukrainian energy infrastructure this winter. Now, it hasn't gotten cold yet. This weekend, we're going to see freezing temperatures for the first time. And the Russians have already attempted to hit Ukrainian energy infrastructure a total of 61 times. So we may see the first attempts to hit Ukrainian energy infrastructure with missiles and an attempt to overwhelm Ukrainian air defense with missiles this weekend. And I've just been told by Jason Willis Starin there that we are under a drone alert in Kyiv. Now, in her comments today, Natalia gave us more information on the situation in the southern axis, down on the left bank of the Dnipro in Kherson. She said that the situation is fluid. She said that Ukraine controls a 2 to 5 mile deep corridor along the bank of the Dnipro from the water's edge inland, from Holopristan all the way to Krinky. Now, that is significant. We also heard for the first time a purpose for this left bank initiative. The stated goal at this time, though she started out by saying the situation is fluid, the stated goal at this time is to end the barbaric shelling of civilian targets in Kherson City. They want to push the Russian artillery back far enough that it can't hit Kherson, and Kherson can be made livable and safe again for the many people that have returned to their homes. And that's the first time we've heard anybody give a mission objective. The Ukrainian Marines gave us some interesting information today as part of this press conference. According to the Ukrainian Marines, they have neutralized, that is, removed from the battlefield, 3,500 enemy combatants in the last 30 days, including 1,200 KIA. Those are significant numbers. They also report that there are hundreds of Marines on the left bank. This is not a couple companies. At least 3 brigades have been tasked with this landing, and parts of those brigades are on the shores at this time. There is an interesting statement by Zelensky today. Ukrainian military intelligence claims to now be aware of an upcoming Russian disinformation campaign targeted at destabilizing the Ukrainian government and the social situation here in Ukraine. That project is called the Maidan 3, after the Maidan, which of course was the site of the revolutions of 2014, where the last really corrupt Ukrainian president was driven from the country to go hide in Russia with the billions he had pilfered from the treasury here. And many people see that revolution of dignity as the beginning of true democracy here in Ukraine. But because it was a coup of a Russian-backed president, the Russians are calling the disinformation campaign the Maidan 3. And it is expected that the function of the Maidan 3 will be to destabilize the government and see Zelensky removed. Now, we have no other details on that yet, but watch your social media for more Russian right now, the Russian disinformation machine is very much focused on Israel and Gaza, very much focused in that direction. But shortly, they are going to return to their main battlefield, and that is disinformation regarding Ukraine. We got some new information today from the Russian government. Volokov, one of the deputy finance ministers, stated that bankruptcies in Russia are at an all-time high. 266,000 businesses have declared bankruptcy in the last 12 months. And there is a record number lined up to go into the bankruptcy courts. So apparently things are not going well here. Business Insider ran a report today on the effects of the brain drain. There's 1 million Russians, and they are the most well-educated, 1.2 million Russians that left Russia because they wanted to avoid the draft and the war. They are some of the most well-educated, highest-earning, most entrepreneurial spirited folks, and the economy is missing them sorely. There is talk, and there have been some documents released, that Russia is planning to move to a full mobilization economy. That is to say that messages have gone out to the regional governors that they should begin to make plans and prepare for full mobilization of the population. Every man of military age is now looking down the barrel of conscription. And the parameters for that are ever widening as Russia becomes increasingly desperate for bodies to throw into its meat grinder. In good news, Finland. Hey, Finland. Is Tony here? Finland, in addition to the 1.5 billion euros that they've already sent, today pledged a new pledge of 100 million euros in military aid for Ukraine, which is deeply appreciated, of course. Additionally, Finland closed its border with Russia. All but one border crossing in the north, as I understand it, is closed. And Norway is watching its borders and ready to close them. Where's Lars? Is Lars here? Lars, the Norwegians are getting ready to close their border should they see a spike in asylum seekers trying to come in from Russia. They're just going to shut it down because nobody wants these bastards, and who can blame them? In other military aid news, the Netherlands, in addition to the 4 billion euros that it's already ponied up to Ukraine, has announced a new package of 2 billion euros for next year. That's the equivalent of $2.2 billion. And that'll be pledged in military support to the Ukrainian armed forces. It is sad to say, looking at the way that Finland and the Netherlands, countries with a fraction of the GDP of the United States. And let's not forget, it came up in conversation today that the United States, Russia's entire GDP is less than California's. It's less than Texas's. It's less than New York's. We got 3 states that make more money than the entire Russian Federation, which is probably why the Russian people are so poor and why 20% of them don't have indoor fucking plumbing, for crying out loud, despite the trillions and trillions of rubles that are sold of natural resources that belong to the Russian people every year. Where does that money go? Into golden toilets for Putin's summer palace on the Black Sea. It's obscene. On the subject of obscenities, John Kirby has said, "We are near the end of the road. Our ability to support Ukraine is dependent on our ability to secure more funding, and the United States Congress is refusing." Mike Johnson, what's his name? Wayne Mullen. These guys are not only holding Tommy Tuberville, they're not only holding the American military hostage, affecting American military readiness, American military morale, and recruitment. But now they are holding the people of Ukraine and Israel hostage for their obscene theocratic agenda. A small portion of the Republican Party, with its MAGA insanity and fanaticism, is now in charge. But I'll tell you something right now. They couldn't stay in charge without the continued silent and complicit support of the rest of the Republican Party. Make no mistake, the obstructionism that we see, the failure to stand up for liberty, the failure to help the Ukrainian people defend themselves in their fight for freedom against this totalitarian nightmare, is not the doing of just Mike Johnson. It is the doing of a complicit Republican Party, and it can't be allowed. It cannot be allowed. I'm glad he had the sense to keep the government open. But how long until the poisonous venom of the rest of the MAGA crowd drives him to shut it down? I'm guessing January 19th. That's my guess. So John Kirby has raised the alarm that we are in trouble, America. We are in real trouble. Our basic obligations to our allies to support our place in the world as the armory of freedom is at jeopardy because of the short-sighted, unenlightened self-interest of these people. Now, that's the top line in terms of the news today. I want to have a conversation about something really, really disturbing and important to understand about our enemy at this time in history. We have been made aware, thanks to the diligence of the Global Rights Compliance firm, which is an international law firm interested in human rights, that Russia planned its war crimes systematically and in advance of the invasion. Make no mistake, the evil that has been done here has been done in a premeditated fashion. That's what we're talking about. Today, not today, but this week coming up, marks the 90th anniversary of the Holodomor. The Holodomor was a nightmare, an engineered famine by Joseph Stalin, in which Ukrainians were taken from their farms and sent to communes in Russia. It was the communization of Ukraine, and a forced, false, fake famine in which millions of Ukrainians starved. And on the 90th anniversary of this evil, we learn that the current Kremlin regime planned to do it again. In the 21st century, they weaponized food to create havoc in the world. And we found this out yesterday, but we're getting more details today. The Global Rights Compliance Group states that in eastern Ukraine, there was a systematic weaponization of Ukrainian grain supplies. A Kremlin-backed network of grain extraction has been carefully built in eastern Ukraine, pointing to a planned campaign of what they called a criminal nature. In December of 2021, right before the full-scale invasion, Russian defense contractors purchased trucks for moving grain. They purchased 3 170-meter bulk cargo ships. They then seized, upon the invasion, railroad transport and port facilities, which they converted or leveraged the grain functions, the ability to move grain through them, for their own purposes. According to Kathleen Murdoch of the GRC Mobile Justice Starvation Team, we have never seen anything so sophisticated and complex in any other conflict anywhere in the world. Never seen anything so sophisticated and complex. Don't kid yourselves. The Russians aren't completely stupid. They're not. There's a lot of smart Russians, and they've been put to work. The Russian blockade, the goal of the Russian blockade and the effects of it were to create soaring grain prices, destabilize the world markets, and put undue pressure on the poorest and most food insecure people in the world. That was the goal of this campaign. And it's not like Putin didn't tell us about it. He told us about it. He was proud of it. He threatened it right at the beginning when he threatened us with the 3 F's. Remember? When they invaded, he turned to the world and he said, if you try to interfere, I will F you up. I will send nukes and you will fry. I will cut off the fuel and you will freeze. I will cut off the food and there will be famine. And he's kept his word on 2 out of 3. How do we know that this is true? Where do we get the information? And I thought some of this was brilliant, boy. So these Ukrainian farmers that had their farms nationalized, that is stolen, they also had their farm equipment commandeered or stolen. And a lot of them had GPS trackers on it. So they just watched the GPS trackers to see their food that they had grown in their trucks that were stolen from them cross the Kerch Bridge into Russia, or run up to Melitopol, where they loaded up the grain onto ships. There are ads from logistics companies in Russia looking to hire truck drivers and port facility people and merchant marine types to move the grain. We've got literal hiring ads. Records of ship and truck sales to the defense contractor for the Russian Federation. Statements from local officials in town hall meetings and official proceedings. The evidence is clear. Russia planned to steal the food from the breadbasket of Europe, to sell on the open market, to line its own pockets, and to create famine here and starve the people of Ukraine, keeping them from the very food that they grow, not just for the world, but for themselves. In summation, the GRC said that the plan was simple. It was to create havoc on a global scale. And that's what Russia has been doing consistently, creating havoc on a global scale. Like-minded people of conscience everywhere cannot allow this. It cannot be allowed. The flaunting of the rules-based order, the order that has ensured the post-World War II prosperity of a third of the world, and now is in a position to extend the benefits of that prosperity to the rest of the world, is all threatened by this madman in Moscow. And we have to get serious about stopping him. We have to get serious about it, folks. All right, that's about it for me. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the YouTube stream. Thanks for everybody that watches on YouTube so that I can see the Q&A for the Tickety Talks.